Hello guys, today in this video we'll be covering chapter number 2, Modern Business Environment, from Strategic Cost Management and Performance Evaluation, which is your paper number 5. In this chapter we'll be covering the theory and also we'll look at the types of questions in the numerical part that are going to come in the exam, but we'll not be solving the questions because this is a quick revision video. So let's quickly begin with our chapter. Modern business environment, as we know, is today's environment, and the customers are the king of this market. But it was not the way earlier, before especially globalization occurred and industrial revolution happened. The dimensions of the transactions were determined by the seller. What all dimensions are there? So let's understand them one by one. Price of the product or service was going to be determined by the seller. At whichever price the seller wanted to sell, he could, because there was limited or no competition available in the market, and customers ultimately had no choice but to purchase from whatever was available. The quality of the product or service was also determined by the seller. The seller would want to keep the quality low so as to reduce the cost of production, and therefore the quality also suffered, and customers did not receive a good quality product or service. Customer responsiveness was low, because what customer responsiveness is, first of all, the ability to provide a positive reply or positive response to the customer's requirement or needs. And this was low because the seller might not provide everything that the customer wants. He would or she would only provide those kind of products or services which could fetch them profit and were demanded in larger quantities. And then, of course, the performance terms was also determined by the seller. This was the case before globalization happened, but once the globalization occurred, what happened is that we all know that the India was not now the market, or the market was not limited to India. It became a global market. So we all know that. But what happened because of that is that there was an increase in the number of suppliers. But also at the same time, there was a massive increase in the number of buyers, which resulted in excess capacity. What is excess capacity is that there is more demand than the supply. Okay, so whenever there would be excess capacity in the industry or in the market, what you will see is that more and more players are now coming or entering into this market to supply, because there is excess demand. So this resulted in increase in competition, and this was possible easily because there was availability and accessibility of knowledge to get into it, and then there was timely availability of raw material. So this all helped to increase the competition in the environment, and ultimately this led to everything, and this led to everything that is possible now today, which is called the modern business environment. And actually this resulted because everyone wanted to satisfy the customer's requirement so that they could capture the larger chunk of the market, right? But this resulted in modern business environment, and which we know today is, it is the customer's market. So now the biggest problem or the biggest challenge of any organization would be to satisfy the customer's requirement. Now, this calls for application of certain new managerial methods, and let's understand them one by one. Our first topic is going to be cost of quality. Cost of quality tells you that for maintaining a quality standard or for achieving a quality standard, an organization is going to incur some money, some cost, right? This is the cost of quality. Now, why are we incurring a cost for maintaining or achieving a quality? Because let's understand that here in modern business environment, we are trying to satisfy the requirements of the customers. So the customers have a quality expectation from the organization. What an organization has to do is to understand this quality expectation of the customers, and on the basis of that they have to set their own quality standards. Now they have to incur this cost to meet these quality standards, okay, or to achieve these quality standards. So that is why you are incurring cost of quality. But sometimes you might not be able to achieve these quality standards, and then you might have to incur some more cost so that you are able to either rectify that thing, or you have already incurred this cost because you were not able to match that quality standard. Okay, so all of those would comprise the cost of quality, come together, combine, and the total of all of those costs will be cost of quality. So let's understand cost of quality into various categories. Let's divide it into the categories that there are. So the cost of quality can be divided into two parts. One is cost of good quality, second is cost of poor quality. Okay, cost of good quality or cost of poor quality, as you can see here, can they have another name as well. Okay, so cost of good quality is also called cost of conformance. The name is given because we are incurring some cost to conform, or what do you mean by conform? To meet to the quality standards that you have set for yourself. Okay, so how much are we conforming? That is conformance. So we are incurring some cost is, we are incurring some cost for conforming to the quality standards. Now there is cost of poor quality, which is known as cost of non-conformance. Why is it named cost of non-conformance? Because we have not conformed to our quality standards, and therefore because of that we might have incurred some cost, or we might have to incur some cost. Okay. Now cost of good quality or cost of conformance can be broken down into two parts. One is prevention cost and second is appraisal cost. Prevention cost is incurred to prevent any kind of defect, so that everything happens smoothly, everything happens perfectly in the first go. That is why we are incurring some cost, and that is called the prevention cost. Some of the examples could be quality planning, quality assurance, supplier evaluation, or training. Then there is appraisal cost. Appraisal cost is basically simply to check if you have conformed or not. If you haven't, it's okay, but to check you had incurred some cost, and only that cost which is related to checking is going to be appraisal cost. Okay, if you have confirmed, good, but you have incurred, still incurred some cost, right, to check, and that checking cost will be covered under your appraisal cost. So basically what is appraisal cost? This is a cost incurred to determine how much have you conformed to your quality standards. Okay, so determining the degree of conformance to the quality standards. So basically this is to detect how much are you conforming. Okay, now it does not matter if you conform 99%, if you conform 100%, if you conform 0%, if you conform 50%, it does not matter to appraisal cost. Appraisal cost is just the cost to incur, a cost incurred to check if you have or not. Okay, so just to check the types of appraisal cost, or the examples, a few of the examples could be testing, quality audit, or inspection. Moving to cost of poor quality. What is cost of poor quality or cost of non-conformance? Right? It comprises of two types of cost. One is internal failure cost. Second is external failure cost. Internal failure cost is any kind of failure that resulted in some cost, or you might have to incur more cost because of it. And this happens before the delivery of the product to the customer. So you have not delivered your product to the customer. So the customer has not found out anything. It is totally internal. Now you found out certain things which did not happen as per the plan that you had set, or are not as per the quality expectation that you had set for yourself, and that is why you have incurred some cost, or you might have to incur some cost that would be covered under internal failure cost. Okay. Now I've written to rectify this. This is a major work. Uh, Majority of the chances would be to rectify, and therefore the cost that will be incurred is for the rectification. But sometimes it is not 100% compulsory to always be for rectification. So sometimes what will happen is that there are certain things that happen internally which do not go as per the plan, and that would also result into extra cost. And that is, you don't have to rectify it, but you have just already incurred extra cost because it did not go as per the plan, and that is also internal failure cost, like scrap or waste or downtime. You don't have to do anything of downtime, it has already happened, and this resulted in extra cost, so that would go under your internal failure cost. All right. But how much rectification? Rectification would comprise of rework, which is majority of the case happens is majority of the times what happens in the questions would be rework, which means that you have produced something and you have not delivered to the customer, but you found out that there was some defect in it, and now you have to rework on that particular thing to rectify it. So that would be internal failure cost. Remember this clearly, that it is happening before the delivery. Okay. Now coming to external failure cost, it is going to be after delivery, which means that you have delivered the product to the customer, and the customer has found out certain problem and is not satisfied with the quality of the product or service as per the set standards by him, as per the expectations by the customer. So what kind of claims can happen is, there could be warranty claims, there could be complaints which you might have to deal with, or there could be return of the product. So all of these result into cost, and cost incurred for all of these would be under the cost of poor quality. Together all of these would form the cost of quality. Okay. Now the types of questions that could come here are mostly going to be numerical only, a very limited theory, especially related to optimum cost of quality that I'm going to cover the next thing. Now what kind of questions can come? There are three types of questions that can come. First is definitely the categorization of cost and making a cost of quality statement, calculating the total cost of quality, right? Second type of question could be that you are given an existing program, you are given a revised or a proposed program, and under which the cost of quality changes, right? The heads have different types of costs. Like for example, in the previous one, in the current one, your cost of poor quality is on the higher side, but then they propose certain thing which increase your cost of good quality and ultimately decrease your cost of poor quality, right? So what we have to do is we have to financially and non-financially suggest whether this program should be implemented or not. Okay, so that would be another type of question in this. And the third type of question would be that you are given something along with the first two, and that something would be to understand how you can trade off between the types of cost. Okay, that is our next thing. So what a manager has to do is that the manager wants to reduce the cost to a minimum, right? Even though it is for quality standard, cost of quality we want is that should be minimum, right? So this minimum cost of quality would be termed as optimum cost of quality, which means that at a level where your cost of quality is at the minimum stage, that would be called as optimum cost of quality. Okay. Now what a manager has to do is to manage between the good cost and the poor cost, right? Now to manage them, what we have to do is we have to first understand the nature. If we incur more cost of good quality, then it would reduce our cost of poor quality significantly. But if we do not incur cost of good quality at all, it might increase our cost of poor quality significantly. Now, this means that in both the scenarios, my cost of good quality plus my cost of poor quality is going to be at a high, making my entire cost of quality to be at a high, right? Now, because of this, what is happening is that my total cost is getting high and I want to reduce this. So what managers are doing is that they are setting a tolerable level. What is a tolerable level? So a tolerable level is a level where you can tolerate the level of defects. Okay, a level where the number of defects can be tolerated, which means that you are tolerating a cost of poor quality at a certain level, setting a level for that. Okay, now at this level your cost of poor quality is going to be low, not zero but low. At the same time, because you've set a tolerable level, you don't have to incur a lot of cost of good quality, keeping that also at a slightly lower side, and therefore your total cost of quality would be minimized. Now along with that, what you can do is you can implement the TPM program, you can also implement the TQM program, you can also implement Six Sigma and other things to improve the quality. Okay, and this would reduce the defects, this would also reduce your downtime, and this would also increase your quality. So ultimately in the long run, what will happen is that you will be able to achieve probably zero defects, and then because you have achieved zero defects, there is no cost of poor quality. If there is no cost of poor quality and we are already implementing this program, we are running this program of TPM and TQM, then we might not require to incur a huge amount of cost of good quality, which can also be reduced further on, and therefore this will lead to a reduced cost of quality in total. Okay, so that is what is the concept of cost of quality. Let's move to our next question before next topic. Before that, let me tell you that there is a case study on this topic in module 3. If you don't have scope view charts, if you have, then you can simply go for scope view charts, and there is a case called cost of quality and Six Sigma. You can simply look at that one. And if you don't have, then there is a case in the module 3. Absolute Singapore Private Limited is the name of the case study. What you have to do is you have to solve it. You can refer to that one for cost of quality. Okay, there is one more case on cost of quality, that is cost of quality and JIT, some bike company in the case study, and that I think was introduced in case study digest if I'm not wrong. And again, if you don't have the scope view charts, then you can go check it out in the case study digest. But if you have scope view charts, you don't have to look for anywhere else, and you can simply find it in scope view charts. Okay, now let's discuss total quality management. Total quality management is the next topic that we're going to understand, and this topic is telling you that it's a philosophy, it's a managerial method that will increase the quality of your product or service. But how are they going to do it? So what they are telling you is that first of all, we have to have a customer focus. We have to understand that customer is the king. So anything that we're going to do is for the customer benefit and for the satisfaction of the customers. So first thing that you have to focus on is customer satisfaction. Now, because of that, what you want to do as an organization is run as a single team, not as multiple functions. So you want to integrate all the functions together so that you can run as a team to satisfy the customers. And keeping all of this in mind, what you have to basically do is you have to work on your processes to improve the quality of your process. TQM basically tells you one thing, that it is never going to be the fault of your workers, it is always going to be the fault of your process if anything is going wrong, which means that if you want to improve something, do not torture your workers. Work on your process and improve the process. The workers are uh, automatically going to adapt to this process. Everything is going to fall into place. So that is what TQM tells you. So what basically you have to understand is that you have to work on the process to improve the quality. Ultimately, it will result into good quality or better quality of product and service. Now to implement total quality management, you require these 6 C's. Okay, what are these 6 C's? First is commitment. You require a commitment from the top management. Unless and until you get a commitment from the top management, you would not be able to implement TQM uh, in a proper manner. Then the next thing that you would want is that you want all the employees to cooperate with you. Alright, cooperate with you while implementation of TQM. You want them to cooperate with each other, and you want the departments to work together and functions to work together so that they can work as a team. The next thing that we would want is that we need to develop a culture of this, of cooperation, develop a culture for TQM, and we need to change the attitude of the employees. So for that, what we can do is we can provide them with training, and we can also help them help make them help us, in fact, in implementation of TQM. So what we can do is we can use the benefits of participation into that. So we will involve them, take their suggestions and accordingly work on them. This will make them feel motivated. The next thing that we have to understand is we have to work in this for this, and we have to implement TQM only and only for the customer focus. So our focus has to be on customer satisfaction only. This advocates continuous improvement, so you don't have to achieve good quality and stop. You have to continuously keep improving on that, and ultimately you need to have a control mechanism so that you will document your process. You will keep monitoring your process for if there are any possible amendments that you want to do in that, any improvements, and then accordingly you will take corrective steps. Okay, that is 6 C's model. Now there is a person called Deming, and Deming has given 14 points as a suggestion along with TQM so that you can implement TQM in a much better manner. So let's understand these 14 points. Now you can see something is written in Hindi here. So what you can do is simply ignore this. What I will tell you is I will translate this into English. Now what is this? This is a learning mechanism. This is a learning technique for remembering these 14 points. Okay, it's going to be difficult for you to remember these 14 points. So we'll use this trick to remember this 14 points. So I'll make you write this down because this is in Hindi. So I'll dictate and you should write it in English. Alright, ready? Okay, let's go. So, a new COP has been taken. A new COP, certificate of practice. Okay, a new COP has been taken. It was inspected. It was inspected. It was inspected. ICAI is a single supplier. ICAI is a single supplier. It said it will improve the process. It said it will improve the process. Full stop. Institute gave us training. Institute gave us training. Institute gave us training and made us leader. And made us leader. Institute gave us training and made us leader. And eliminated our fear. And eliminated our fear. And eliminated our fear. Yep. Full stop. We broke down barriers between departments. We broke down barriers between departments. We broke down barriers between departments and stopped slogans. And stopped slogans. What is slogan? Any kind of protest where you see people are chanting slogans together, right? So stopped slogans. We changed the management. We changed the management. We changed the management and removed their proud. And removed their proud. We changed the management and removed their proud. We educated everyone. We educated everyone and asked them to self improve. And asked them to self improve. Full stop. This is how we brought transformation. Full stop. This is how we brought transformation. Okay. So what you have to do is you have to highlight now COP. You have to highlight new. New COP, right? Highlight new, highlight COP. Highlight inspected. Highlight single supplier. Highlight improve. Then highlight training. Highlight leader. Department between barriers. Highlight slogans. Highlight management. Highlight proud. Educate. Self improve. Transformation. Okay. Now let's begin. First point is COP, which tells you that you should have a constancy of purpose. Your purpose of the purpose of the organization should be constant. It should not change over time. Okay. Second thing is new philosophy. This new philosophy of TQM should be adopted by the top management. Okay. The commitment is required and the adaptation is required from the top level management. Third is cease dependence on inspection. What it basically tells you is that if you would have done everything correctly in the first go, you would have not required to inspect it. There would have been no need to inspect it at all. So cease the dependence on inspection, do everything right the first time. Fourth point is single supplier. Move towards a single supplier to reduce the variation uh, between the inputs that you purchase, as well as also you will benefit from the economy of large scale purchasing. That is moving towards single supplier. You would do this unless you are afraid of failure of delivery, in which case you will move towards multiple suppliers. Okay. The next point is improve. You have to focus on continuous improvement. Okay. The next point is going to be training on the job. So we had highlighted training, right? So provide training to your employees on the job so that the variation between the type of work, between how they work, can be reduced. Then make leaders, and there should be a leadership role in the organization which will lead the entire organization with a vision and with a proper strategy and with integrity and ethics. The next thing is drive out fear. You cannot uh, manage anything by fear. You are supposed to eliminate this thing, and you are not supposed to make employees follow certain norms just because they are afraid of you. The next thing is eliminate, because it can be counterproductive. It can reduce the productivity of the employees because they would be afraid to work. The next is eliminate management by objectives. Management by objectives tells you that you want to produce as much as you can in the limited resources that are available. So this has to be removed now, because management by objectives tells you to produce as much as you can, which is not required now because we are trying to focus on the quality and not on the quantity. So eliminate management by objectives. Then departmental barriers have to be broken down because we want them to function together and not in isolation. So breaking down departmental barriers is very important for implementation of TQM. The next thing is you have to remove the barrier to pride of workmanship. We had highlighted proud, so that gives us the point, which is removing barriers to pride of workmanship. What does this mean? Any kind of dissatisfaction to the employees while working for our organization has to be eliminated so that they feel proud to work at our place. Okay, so any kind of barrier to this proud is going to be removed. The next thing is educate and self improve. Uh, you have to not just train them but also motivate them to improve by themselves and to keep educating themselves. And next is to eliminate slogans. This is for the thing that you cannot force anything on the employees, and at the same time you cannot blame them for the for anything that you are not able to achieve, it is going to be the fault of the process and not the employees. That is elimination of slogans. And the last one is transformation. So the transformation is not just the top level management's job, not just the operational staff's job, but it is the job of everyone. So everyone has to come together to transform their organization for better quality. Okay, this is Deming's 14 points. The next thing that we understand is criticisms of TQM. First of all, internal focus sometimes is so much high that even though we were targeting customer orientation, but this does not happens in reality. Then the next point is focus on documentation and measurable outcomes. So what happens is that we focus too much on the documentation part so that we can check and improve our process, and sometimes the outcomes are not measurable. And the next point is quality assurance rather than quality improvement. Sometimes what happens is that we set a target and then try to achieve that target, and we don't tend to improve further beyond it. So our focus is limited to a set target, right? So therefore there is quality assurance rather than quality improvement. There is PDCA cycle that you can use. So what it tells you is that there has to be a plan first of all, which means that what kind of actions are you going to take. Now the next thing is going to be development, which is basically executing the action steps that we had planned for. Third is to check, which means to measure if we were doing it correctly or not, if the things are happening as per what we had thought of. And the last one is act, which is to take improvement actions if there are any required. That is PDCA cycle. Okay. The next topic is business excellence model. Let's understand business excellence model. Business excellence model is much like TQM. It also tells you that you have to integrate all the functions and improve your quality by focusing on your process. But it does not have a customer focus, but it has a stakeholder focus, which means that it is not focusing only on the customer, but also on employee, also on society, also on shareholder, and also on supplier, also on other people who are your stakeholders. Now, certain models are in our syllabus. A few of them are EFQM model, Baldrige criteria for performance excellence, Singapore Business Excellence Framework, Australia Business Excellence Framework, and Japan Quality Award model. These five models are there in our syllabus. Three of them just have names significant for our syllabus, and two of them have been discussed a little bit more in detail. These are the models of business excellence model. And if you are asked what are the tools available for business excellence, for implementing business excellence, so you are supposed to write these down. You're supposed to write EFQM, you're supposed to write Baldrige criteria for performance excellence, and so on. So you're supposed to give their names. Okay. Now what are these tools? Let's understand them one by one. Three of them just have names for a syllabus. Two of them are to be discussed a little bit more in detail. So let's begin with EFQM model. EFQM model basically works on a cause and effect relationship. It understands the cause and effect relationship to give you insights. Okay. Now there are three basic questions that are asked in EFQM model. First is, why does an organization exist, and you have to understand what is the purpose behind the organization existing, and what kind of strategy are they using, and why are they using that particular strategy has to be understood at this point. This is called direction. Next thing that we have to understand is, how are we going to achieve this strategy? This is execution. And third thing is going to be result, which means that we are asking what we have already achieved and what is the kind of thing that we want to achieve. So these are results. Now what are the uses of EFQM? First is, it gives you a holistic view of the current operation so that you can understand what your current operations are and how are they performing. So basically, to understand the current level of performance of the organization, you can use EFQM. Based on this, you will be able to understand how you can use your core competencies to achieve better results. Second is that it assists you to transform your strategies to become future ready, which means that in future the requirement of your stakeholders are going to change. They are not going to keep the same year on year. So in the future we need to transform our strategies to provide them with their new requirements, and therefore to achieve excellence. So it focuses on continuous improvement. Then it helps you to build resilience to prepare a response for any kind of disruption that might happen in marketplace. So it makes you agile, which means that you are now more dynamic because of EFQM model. Fourth is coveted award. Coveted award basically is that EFQM is actually a foundation, which means it's an organization, and it provides with an award. It gives an award to the organizations which are listed in EFQM and using EFQM as a tool. So it provides an award that can help the organization to build a brand image and reputation in the marketplace. And the last one is self-assessment tool. So basically an organization can understand the current level of performance and can also self-assess. What is self-assessment required for? To understand what is its position in the marketplace relative to the competitors. Okay, this is how the EFQM model can be used. It can be used along with radar, RADAR, which is a logic assessment framework. RADAR has a full form. From the first R we get results, which means that these are the things that we want to achieve. So what an organization is aiming to achieve is going to be results. Second thing is approach. How are we going to achieve these results? Okay, the approach required for it, the strategy required for it is going to be under approach. That is the first thing. Then you get D. D is for deploy, which means that now you have to select the approach and execute the approach. So deploy is to execute the approach, whichever you have selected. Then comes your A and R, which is to assess and refine, which means that you will now learn based on your findings and you will improve accordingly. That is radar. Our next topic is going to be theory of constraints or throughput accounting. Theory of constraints basically tells you that not all resources are available, or not all resources or activities are available in unlimited supply, right? There is going to be some or the other thing that is going to be limited. So there could be a constraint, in which case you would have to understand that in the case of this constraint, still you have to utilize this, utilize the resources which are available, and then you have to produce as much revenue and as much profit as you can. Okay, so what we are dealing with here is throughput. Throughput is just like another contribution. Okay, it's a brother of contribution, but it tells you something else also. So throughput is supposed to be just like contribution, but there's a slight difference. Contribution assumes the labor cost and the variable overheads, which are also majorly dependent upon the labor hours, as variable. But throughput tells you that you are not going to hire most of your labor on contractual basis. In fact, our labor, work or not, we have to still pay them, which makes them of fixed nature. Right? So throughput assumes the labor cost to be fixed cost and variable overheads also as fixed cost. So what is variable cost now? Only the material cost. Mostly. Why mostly? Because there are certain types of questions in which they would give you another uh, cost and tell you that assume this to be also variable. Okay. Or they might simply tell you this is also variable overhead. So in that case, if the question tells you this is variable, then assume it to be variable. In this case, throughput would be selling price minus variable cost upon time, because throughput is the rate of generating money. Okay, it is not the amount of money that is being generated, it is the amount of money with respect to time. Okay, so selling price minus variable cost upon time, for if you are calculating on a per unit basis, let's say, so selling price per unit minus variable cost per unit divided by time taken for production of 1 unit, that is going to be your throughput. Okay, now if there is a bottleneck activity, which means that there is an activity or a resource that is going to be limited, it is going to restrict your throughput because your output is restricted, right? The lesser your output, the lesser your throughput, correct? So that we term as bottleneck activity or bottleneck resource. What we are supposed to do is we are supposed to utilize them 100% or even more than 100% because they are in limited supply. So as much as you have, use it. Okay, so you have to utilize it 100%. But non-bottleneck activity, which means those activities which are not restricting your output, are going to be utilized as per the bottleneck activity and not to be utilized 100%. Why not? Because if you utilize them also 100%, your work in progress might pile up, and you don't want that because it will increase your finance cost and it will also increase your carrying cost. So you don't want that to happen, and therefore your non-bottleneck activity has to be utilized as per the bottleneck activity utilization. Alright, now what are the operational measures? One is throughput, which is basically like contribution, so you want to increase it. Second is investment. Investment is something that you want to minimize. What is investment? Anything that is any amount of money that is being tied up in the system. Okay, so for example, furniture, computer, plant, machinery, all of that. Third is expenses. Operating expenses. Operating expenses are supposed to be decreased. You want to decrease your expenses as much as you can. So this is basically the money that is going out of the system, all other expenses, and this would comprise mostly of labor and overheads. Okay, now throughput accounting. Throughput accounting is basically that we are using throughput as a measure and calculating certain ratios on the basis of that, and using that for our purpose of finding out optimum product mix. Okay, so optimum product mix is basically if you have multiple products and you have limited resources, how are you going to utilize your resources and what kind of products are you going to create first, So are you going to create product A, B, C? If you have three products, then are you going to create product A fully, B fully, and C not completely? Or if you are going to create B fully, C fully, but A not completely, or something like that. You have multiple product mix options. So uh, the optimum product mix would be a mix of products which you are ready to create, which will fetch you with the highest throughput. Okay, so we use throughput accounting for that also. So throughput accounting would be, first of all, we have three ratios in there. We are going to understand the three ratios. First is throughput per bottleneck minute, which means that we have basically calculated throughput. Okay. Now per bottleneck minute is basically nothing in case of throughput, because throughput is anyways a rate. Okay. So it is just the presentation is as per throughput per bottleneck minute. Okay. So that you are able to understand how your denominator is going to be present. Okay. So throughput anyways is calculated as per bottleneck minute or per bottleneck hour or per bottleneck period. So throughput per bottleneck period divided upon factory cost per bottleneck period. Now this is another topic where you might get a numerical question from. So factory cost is given for the entire time and not just for per product. Okay, in the question mostly, and you are given the total number of hours that you have available. So what you can do is you can simply divide your total factory cost by the total time that you have available, and you would get a number of factory cost per bottleneck minute, and you can use this for calculation of TA ratio. Okay, so the first thing that we have understood is TA ratio, which is throughput accounting ratio. Now, because our numerator is throughput, denominator is factory cost, we want the numerator to be higher and denominator to be lower. Which means that if TA ratio is greater than 1, it is going to be profitable. If it is less than 1, it is going to be not profitable. What are the remaining two ratios? One is related to labor cost, another one is related to material cost. Material cost upon factory cost per bottleneck minute, or labor cost upon factory cost per bottleneck minute. This is just to understand how much material cost are we incurring in comparison to factory cost, and how much labor cost are we incurring in comparison to factory cost. These ratios are not majorly useful for the exam perspective. From the exam perspective, TA ratio is going to be the most useful one. And why are we using TA ratio? For calculation of optimum product mix. Coming to our next topic, which is supply chain management. Supply chain management is basically the management of integration of all the activities and functions right from the beginning, where we procure from until the end the consumer uses it. Any kind of function, any kind of supplier, any kind of service provider coming in between, all of the activities provided by them, everything is integrated in the supply chain, and when you try to manage it, it is called supply chain management. There are two types of supply chains. One is push model, second is pull model. Push model works on supply basis, which means that the supplier would produce as much as they want to, the manufacturer would produce as much as they want to. Accordingly, the retailer would purchase as much as they want to, the wholesaler might purchase as much as they want to, and the customer would purchase from the available resources, from the available products or services. But on pull basis, everything works on customer demand basis, which means that the customer would first of all place the demand, place the order, and on the basis of that order, the retailer will purchase from the wholesaler will purchase from the manufacturer, and the manufacturer will produce accordingly that amount of quantity only, and the manufacturer for that amount of quantity production would purchase that amount of required materials from supplier. Okay, so that is what is pull model. Now there are types of supply chain management. First is CRM, which is customer relationship management. That is to manage the relationship with the customers and to understand their behavior. Second is supplier relationship management. That is building relationship with the supplier. Third is customer service management, which basically deals with the services that are being provided to the customers and managing them, would be CSM. Next is manufacturing flow management. That is basically managing the flow of the manufacturing system, which is to manage the operations. Next is demand management. It relates with creating demand for your product and also to understand the demand and accordingly provide and supply as per the demand. Next is order fulfillment, deals with delivery. Basically, it is about fulfilling the customer's order, not about production, but more about delivery to the customer of that required product. Next is return management. If the customers return, you have to manage them, handle them. And the last one is product development and commercialization, which means if you create a new product, you also have to commercialize it. All of these types are the types of supply chain management. Now there is downstream supply chain management, there is upstream supply chain management. Upstream deals with the relationship with supplier, downstream deals with the relationship with the buyers. The relationship with suppliers is dependent upon certain factors like sources, number of suppliers, cost, quality, speed of delivery, make, buy or outsourcing decision. On the basis of sources, what you understand is the location of the supplier. Is it near, far? The availability of raw material with the supplier, is it going to be available all the time, every time we require, or not going to be available? Multiple sources, if you have, if you can switch between the suppliers easily. If you can also measure the size of the supplier, and based on that your bargaining power would be affected. So all of these things you need to consider first uh, before going for the upstream supply chain management. The next thing is the number of suppliers. Do we want to go for a single supplier and avail bulk discount policy, or we want to go for multiple suppliers to avoid risk of any failed delivery? It depends from organization to organization. Next is cost of the product, quality of the product, speed of delivery of the product, and the last one is if you want to make them ourselves, if you want to buy them from the customer, or if you want to outsource the entire thing to someone else to manufacture them for us. Okay, that is upstream supply chain management. Now, if you use in IT, which is information technology in it, what you can do is you can procure electronically. So there is a concept of e-procurement which has three fundamentals. First is e-sourcing, which means that getting tenders, okay, not Tinder, tenders or quotations from the suppliers electronically. Next is e-purchasing, which is to purchase or place the order electronically. And the last one is e-payment, which is transfer of funds in the electronic mode. Next comes your downstream supply chain management. Downstream supply chain management is basically the relationship with the buyers. There is a six market model, first of all, to understand how you can do relationship marketing, how you can attract the customers. To remember this, there's a mnemonic which I have developed, which is IIRRSC. Okay, you can use this, or you can, what you can do is you use the another one if you can't remember through this. The next one is written in Hindi, but I'm going to translate this for you so you can write it down. Ready? All right. So you need internal influence. You need internal influence to refer you for recruitment. To refer you for recruitment. To refer you for recruitment, plus supplier plus customer. Plus supplier plus customer. Okay. So internal, second is influence, third is a refer, fourth is a recruit, and the next two are supplier and customer. One is internal market. Internal market basically deals with the internal departments that purchase and supply to each other. Okay, and also your employees become your first customers because they, of course, they would be purchasing from your organization only. So they become your first customers. Second is influencer markets, basically deals with the influences that we have in today's world. All the social media influencers and so-called influencer market. What they do is they influence the people to purchase your product or service. Okay. Influencer market. Third is referral market, basically works with the referral agencies or just your customers who are referring other customers your product or service. Then there is recruiters. Recruiters basically are related with the recruitment agencies or placement agencies that you want to tie up with, or campus placement universities, so that you can hire the required talent for your organization. Based on this, you would be able to better satisfy the customer's requirements. Of course, on the basis of that, you would be able to market your product and service better to the customer. Next is supplier. Supplier market. Supplier helps an organization to understand the requirement of the customers better, and also can provide you with the information about the latest technology or latest development or advancement in the field of the inputs that you would require. Okay, so that you can also use better inputs to provide better products to the customers. And last one is customer market, in which you basically do CRM, customer relationship management. So let's get into it. Customer relationship management has four things to understand. First is customer analysis of behavior, which is that you need to analyze the behavior of the customers, understand their buying patterns, understand their behavioral patterns, understand their needs and requirements. Second is to do the customer account profitability, which is basically to identify what type of customer is profitable for you, what kind of customer is not profitable for you. So if an organization has multiple customers, probably if not more, then you could do it on customer basis. If it's a huge number, then you could segment your customers with specific characteristics which are common, and on the basis of that you can calculate a customer account profitability. What you have to do is basically calculate the cost of particular customer or for particular customer segment on the basis of activity based costing, and allocate that to the customer segment or the customer, calculate the revenue from that customer segment or the customer, and accordingly find out the profitability of that customer and customer segment. Okay, based on this you would be able to understand what kind of customers or customer segment are adding to your profits or are eroding from your profits. Okay, this customer account profitability. Third is customer lifetime value. Customer lifetime value is basically the life of the customer, which means that the day from when the person became your customer till the time that person is going to remain to be your customer. Okay, that is the customer life. Over this customer life, what kind of value are you going to generate? What kind, as in how much of the value are you going to generate from that particular customer? By value, I mean the revenue that you're going to generate from the customer. Okay, you are going to discount this to calculate the present value, that is going to be your customer lifetime value. And the last one is customer selection, acquisition, retention, and extension. Selection is basically to select the target customers that you want to cater to. Acquisition is basically to attract these target segment customers so that they start purchasing from you, basically deals with advertisement. Then comes your customer retention, that is to keep satisfying the customers, keep communicating with them, keep providing them with better quality so that they are retained. And then there is customer extension, in which there are three things. One is resell, second is cross sell, third is upsell. Resell is to sell more and more of the same kind of product that you are already selling to your customer. Cross sell is to sell the similar type, okay, something which is related to it, not the same thing, but something that is related to it. You are trying to sell that also to your customer. And the last one is upsell, which is to sell something more expensive to your customer than what they already purchased from you. Our next topic is gain sharing arrangement. Of course, before that, supply chain management has a case study. The name of the case study is going to be Sun Electronics. You can refer that from module 3. The next case is going to be gain sharing. Again, there is a case study on gain sharing from Raya Health Services, something like that. And you can check it out in your module 3 again. Of course, all of these cases are there in the scope view charts. If you have them, you can simply use it. So gain sharing arrangement is basically when there is existing contract, and what you do is you review the existing contract and adjust it in a certain manner. What is this manner? That the supplier would provide all the services without guarantee of any payment. The benefits, although, would be shared to the supplier if the benefits are generated to the customer by the supplier's service. Okay, now these benefits could be financial as well as non-financial. These could be shared with the supplier. Okay, now this would be as per the structured terms which are defined in the agreement. And on the face of it, this creates a situation of a win-win, because the supplier would be on the side of the customer, which means that the supplier would want the customer to benefit so that the benefits could be shared with the supplier. So both of them would benefit from this situation, and therefore this is a win-win situation. Although there is a very high risk that the benefits would not be delivered to the customer and the supplier would provide all the services without guarantee of any payment. So the supplier might receive nothing in return for all the services that the supplier has still provided. Okay. Now, there could be certain reasons of failure of the gain sharing arrangement. One is if there are unstructured terms, the terms are not structured properly. Second is if the relationship between the supplier and the customer is not good, which means the service provider and the customer. Third is if there is an error in implementing the gain sharing arrangement. Okay, next is precautions that you can take for avoiding the failure. First is you make the requirement specific and mention them and specify them very clearly. Second is have a clear formula and period for calculation of the benefit sharing. And third is the innovation should be from both sides so that the relationship improves between them. Okay. Our next topic is service level agreement, which is not covered here because it's a small topic, that you create agreements for the service that you want to achieve from the service provider. Okay, that is service level agreement. So you mention everything in that service level agreement. Next is outsourcing, which topic deals with the outsourcing. So we get the things that we had studied in the older days, in the childhood days of our 11th and 12th standard when we studied business studies. We understood the advantage and disadvantage of outsourcing. So what are the advantages of outsourcing? First is you get cost saving because the person you are outsourcing to is expert in that, and they would, because of the economies of large scale production, they would result in cost saving to you. Second is you get free from investment, that you don't have to invest in any kind of machinery, you don't have to hire people for it. So you get free from investment because you have simply outsourced the production or whatever to another player. Third is you get free for major operations. So by outsourcing a side activity or side product to someone else, you can focus now more on your major operations, which are of key importance to your organization. Now, certain disadvantage of outsourcing is, first, confidentiality is lost because your data might be shared with the service provider or supplier or outsourcer, and accordingly the confidentiality is lost. Second is, the control that you had or over your operations is lost because now it is dependent upon the outsourcing partner. Third is, quality problems might generate if the outsourcing partner does not have competent staff or competent machine, or is not using the a fine quality of material for the manufacturing. Therefore, quality problems might result from outsourcing operations. Okay. Now, there are certain qualitative factors that you need to consider before taking the outsourcing decision. First is quality that is going to be provided to you. Second is the reliability, that the products are going to be delivered on time to you. Third is suppliers' financial stability, so that they don't become bankrupt in the middle, and then ultimately your operations are stuck. Fourth is alternate source of supply. If the supplier stops in the middle, then you can simply switch from one supplier to another supplier. So you have to have an alternate source of supply. And the last one is going to be alternate use of capacity if it is vacant. So if you were producing something, if you had capacity to do it, and if you decide to outsource it, what will you do with this vacant capacity? So if you have an alternate use, you need to check for it. These are the qualitative factors for outsourcing. The type of numerical questions, one we discussed was in cost of quality, second we discussed was in theory of constraints and throughput accounting, and third is going to be in customer lifetime value and customer account profitability. I have already discussed the customer account profitability thing. You have to calculate the revenue minus the cost of serving to that particular customer or customer segment based on activity based costing. That calculates the customer account profitability. Okay. Customer lifetime value also I've discussed, that you need to calculate the value. It is going to be given in the question. So the value is given, you have to discount this to today's time, and that would give you a present value. So that would be CLV. Okay, these are the types of questions that come in the numerical section. Certain questions might come in gain sharing as well. They might come. So what can happen is that they might give you a question like, let's say that something could be produced for 24 lakhs. So if you can produce it for any amount lesser than 24 lakhs, then we will share the benefit with you and certain percentage of it with you. Okay, so that way gain sharing arrangement can also come for a numerical question. So basically this brings us to the end of chapter 2. Now if you like the video, please hit the subscribe button to the channel for more such videos like this and of other chapters, and please like the video so that it spreads to your friends and other people who can also use it for their benefit. And also refer your friends to this channel, this is a new channel that I've started. My older channel had all the things in Hindi. I have developed a new channel completely for English content and resources, so that you can benefit out of it. Thank you so much for watching. All the best. I'll see you with the coverage of next chapter.